But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
And good day to our lovely listeners, old, new, and those who have yet to see our content. Welcome to HBR News, number 146. Crossing guard not allowed to high-five kids? My name is Brian Martinez, and I am back with the polecats, those critters who ferret out the best feels, funnies, and what the fucks, to discuss Slam Bam Badger style. Before we get into the main event, let's get into some spaghetti of the week. Well, there's no news roundup this time, but I thought before we got into the main stories that there was some things I thought I would tell you about. One, we are once again going to be going to court, and it's kind of my fault. So I put out a tweet when we were doing the last when we were at the court last, that was simply two words that said we won. And our opponents at the Mary Sue seized the opportunity to essentially try to do as much damage as they could, or at least alleviate as much damage as they were going to be possibly subject to, by using that to extend things out, drag things out. Of course.
In other words, to act like cunts.
Yeah. So of course, I can see how they could see it that way, but I don't think they have a leg to stand on here, because two words, we won, doesn't really amount to much, and it could be in reference to anything. Plus, I took it down because I thought some people were reading into it a lot, and it was starting to spread around. I didn't want to be premature. So, nonetheless, because this is the nature of our opponents, they're going to do anything they can in their power to either minimize damage to themselves or maximize damage to us. This is just the way lawyers work. So we have to go back for another court date. Fortunately, they were originally going to, I think they were going to set it to like next January, and they decided to do it earlier. So it's going to be July 3rd, 4th, and 5th of this year. And so we are doing another fundraiser. Now, you can see that I'm stumbling over my words trying to explain all this. I'm not the person to go to. Allison made a video that was put up earlier today, not even an hour ago, I think, or so. Just watch that. She explains everything a lot better than I do. But don't do it now because you're watching this show. So do it afterwards, But that's where it is. So if you want to donate and help us win, we have to beat these people. And the thing is, we know that they're going to do this, right? This is the Mary Sue. Just like the Gawker deal with Hulk Hogan. They will drag this out as much as they can because they have no interest in doing the right thing. They only have an interest in winning. And that means they'll do whatever it takes. So if you want to see this through to the end, please consider feeding the Badger by going to feedthebadger.com and donating to our fundraiser so that we can finish this court crap and get it over with. Hopefully, this will be the end of this journey. If you don't want, or if you want to do it another way, you can donate to us more long-term by essentially going to our Patreon. And I think we have a maker support now too. So if you have a problem with patreon.com, just use maker support and become a patron or a supporter. So that out of the way, I just wanted to shill that for us and for Allison. And I want to, for those of you guys who have helped us out in the past, I want to give you my deepest condolences. I mean, not condolences, appreciation for helping us out. Condolences is inappropriate because I'm still here, so there's no need for those. In addition, if you guys are interested, I don't know when it's going to come out, but this Friday, I'm going to be doing an interview on Paul's channel, Paul Elam, talking about testicular cancer. I'm also going to be on there with Mike Craycraft, who is the founder and head of the Testicular Cancer Society, which is basically a nonprofit organization that essentially raises money and for testicular cancer research and to help people who cannot help themselves. As a victim of testicular cancer myself, I wanted to try to spread the word about this to as many people as possible. So we'll be on Paul's channel doing an interview on Friday. I don't know if it's going to be live or what, but be on the lookout for something either on Friday or shortly thereafter on Paul's channel, and maybe we'll mirror it here at HBR. So just wanted to tell you guys about that. In addition, something happened today. So before we get into the news, there was something I found today. Do you guys know what today is? Do you guys know that today is a holiday?
Pancake Day, baby. Do you like pancakes? Yeah, you like pancakes. That's what you're talking about, right?
No, not exactly. Although that sounds way better. That sounds way better than what I'm about to describe to you.
It is Pancake Day, though.
You might be aware, tomorrow is Valentine's Day, right? So kind of a big deal for some people, and for a lot of other people, probably most people, they don't give a shit. Like, it's just a day where you do something for your significant other that you probably should be doing all the time anyway. And we all know that Valentine's Day, at least in the West, is really like, do something for your girlfriend day. That's how most people treat it. This is how the normies act about it, when it really shouldn't be. Like, for example, did you guys know that in Japan, they have a Valentine's Day that's for women, and then they also have a Valentine's Day that's for men. That they're separate. And that, like, there's like a custom of on one of those days, like the ones for men, where the women, like, bring them a bunch of gifts and do stuff for their man, and then the reverse happens on a different day of the year. Do you guys know about that? I thought it was kind of interesting, because even though that's sort of what we think Valentine's Day should be, it's often not. It's more about what does the man do for the woman. That's like the majority, the way things usually go. So yeah. Go ahead.
I'm hesitant to speak because I'm echoing through your mic.
Are you?
Yeah.
Let me see. Do we sound okay to you guys?
See, I'm not hearing that echo at all now. I was hearing it before the show, but there have been people in the chat saying to turn down your bass and turn up your sound.
Me?
But yeah.
Drop that bass, Brian.
Regardless, regarding Valentine's Day, it's kind of banned at my house. We don't do pick one day out of the year and make that the day that we celebrate. We just sort of go out on dates when we want to go out on dates, and when we find things, we run across things that we think each other would like, we get them, and if we can afford them, and if we can't, we don't, and do stuff for each other when it's needed, or when we think of it, and it because we don't set aside a day for it, we end up doing a lot more, because we're not holding off for Valentine's Day to do something big, but we do a lot more little things because of that. Because I just hated the idea of, I hate being the center of focus of anything like that anyway, but I hated the idea of it being like a responsibility. And especially, if it was supposed to be something that he's going to get nagged about by everybody else, and I'm supposed to use it as bragging rights and all this other stuff. It just doesn't seem like the focus of the holiday is your relationship or your love or anything. It becomes one-upping people, and I don't know, putting a burden on your partner and stuff like that instead of something cool. So
Sure.
and start like from the get-go in our relationship, I'm like, Valentine's Day doesn't exist. We're just gonna do what we do. And somebody's mentioning Card Manufacturing Day. Sweetest Day is the other one. We don't do Sweetest Day. Hallmark invented Sweetest Day to sell cards. That's all it's for.
Yeah, like Boss's Day
yeah.
and Secretary Day and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Max, can you still hear yourself?
Let me see. Let me talk. No, I'm actually good now.
Okay.
But anyways, just in respect to Valentine's Day, fuck that. Let's live in the now. Let's talk about Pancake Day. Guys, in case you didn't know, Pancake Day is today, and I guess you can also throw in waffles there because they are made of the same material. If you want the way to my heart or the way to my significant other's heart, just make pancakes, or specifically European pancakes, which are also known as crepes. They are the best. I'm actually eating pancakes right now. They're delightful.
It's something to do with Jesus, in case you didn't know. In the same way Easter eventually got us chocolate eggs, Shrove Tuesday, there was some other thing with Jesus, and now we have pancakes. It's delightful.
Well, I mean, it is.
There we go.
It is the type of food that is closest to God. Pancakes, that is. They're like nature's form of crack.
I like pancakes, but I'm a bit more of a French toast guy myself. Does that mean
Get out. Get out. Just stop.
I think that's officially blasphemy.
I like pancakes, but I don't put syrup on them. I put eggs over easy on them and cut them up and let the egg soak into the pancake and eat that.
Well, the Pancake Day sounds delightful, but the fact is, Max, you're a bigot and everyone else is bigots because you're not acknowledging that it's actually, and I swear to God, this is serious. It's Galentine's Day. So what is Galentine's Day? Well, it's trending on Twitter, #Galentine's Day. And Galentine's Day is essentially Valentine's Day for women who have friends who are also women. And they spend time with them. It's funny because it came from, and I mean, unless it predates this, but this is what I know it from. There was a good comedy show that I used to like watching called Parks and Recreation. And Amy Poehler starred as a character named Leslie Knope, who was this like feminist and politician and stuff. But she was often, like the butt of her own jokes, right? And she was also lonely and she made up Galentine's Day because she didn't have a Valentine, if I remember correctly. So she wanted to hang out with her friend, Ann Perkins, right? So it was basically a made-up holiday for a girl for a woman who didn't have a Valentine so that she would not hate herself. And it was meant to be ironic and funny, right?
So yet another excuse for girls' night gets swiped from television.
Yeah.
Just call it, Amy, just call it what it is. It's Lesbian Lover Day.
No, because it's about the sisterhood. And people are all over it. Like, there are tweets going out about Galentine's Day all day. It doesn't stop. Unironic. Here's one. Somebody put up, this one's actually kind of funny. It says, North Korea's Galentine's Day be lit. And there's a photo of the North Korean women at the Olympics that are clapping because Galentine's Day or else.
Oh God! If men came up with something like this, we want one day a year where we're allowed to hang out with our buddies. The gals would try to accuse them of pulling a fast one. Yeah. How dare you have a day when you're allowed to hang out with your buddies? You're just trying to get a boys' night. Well, that's the rest of the year you don't get one. So why not? But I'll bet you dimes to dollars women would throw a fit.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't. We would call it Palentine's Day, but you see,
there you go.
Men don't. We don't do that. I don't think that guys don't do that. I don't think. I think they tend to basically be like, well, if I'm going to hang out with my dudes, I'm just going to hang out with my dudes. We don't have to call it something. We don't have to stand in solidarity. We certainly don't need to tweet about it. It's just not the same. It's just not the same. This is just like, I was joking with my wife about it. Kind of joking. I was like, this is just another reason why we should never have given women access to social media. It's like, this is what they do.
They would come up with an alternative. Guaranteed. Yeah. Can't stop women from talking.
Yeah, I know. And I know that you guys are probably in the comments saying not all, and I know that's true, but if this doesn't annoy you guys a little bit, you're not watching the right show. This should be annoying. So it is to me. But that's it. It was just...
Is this my cue to say, no, women are all the same? Wait.
Yes. All right. So that's it. I just wanted to throw out the Galentine's Day thing real quick. I thought it was funny, but it's not really a story. So moving forward, we're going to get into the Polecat panel. So, in case you guys hadn't already figured it out, today's Polecat panel consists of Max Darrett, Simpsons Kin, and definitely not Tweety Bird. I don't know why it took me so long to come around to that character, but I finally did. Our Polecat Punster and Pussycat Punisher, Hannah, Dr. Randomer Cam, Evil Panda, Puppet Master, and Rabid Long Range Rhetorician, and me, the Supreme Doge in Charge, Brian, back in the sack. No pun intended. I'm not going to lie. And there's room now. So, today we'll be discussing the following topics. Meet Christina Garcia, one of the lawmakers behind the push of the seemingly never-ending Me Too movement, and also someone who herself has been hoisted on her own petard as she has been accused of sexual misconduct in the form of groping. Irony. You may have heard the story of the female teacher who hugs and high-fives her students as they enter the classroom. Do you remember that? It went viral. It was a teacher from some small Midwestern town that would high-five and hug and do various movements with her students before they enter the classroom. Pretty cool, huh? Well, it seems that if you're a male crossing guard, high-fives are not, in fact, okay. In fact, they are apparently used to groom children. Funny how that works. In other news related to #MeToo, our president made a fatal mistake on Twitter when he made a reasonable tweet questioning the witch hunts taking place. I originally didn't care much about this story, but then the media ran with it, and something has to be said. A former Carolina University football player was expelled after a cheerleader accused him of rape. As it turns out, he was found not guilty despite his expulsion. Now he is suing the university. You go, boy. And finally, Ted Whibben shows us once again that when it comes to any industry, any discipline, and anything at all whatsoever, women always have it worse. And the only solution is more women using their women magic to make things womanly and therefore better. This issue, bathroom lines are sexist. We'll get into that later. And finally, our bonus story for the patron-only after show. Big Think is not just an incredibly ironic name for a YouTube channel. It's also a website with equally stupid articles like the one we will be reading through on today's after show. This piece presents the solution to the problem of sexual assault and rape not being taken seriously enough, despite the Me Too movement. How do we fix it exactly? Well, according to Big Think, we need to stop using the beyond a reasonable doubt standard of evidence. I mean, if we put all the men in prison, they can't rape any women there, right? Anyway, if you want to participate in our after shows either as an audience member or a participant, please consider becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. If you don't want to wake up one morning and find yourself unable to find our content because YouTube finally dropped the axe on our channels, please go to badgerfeed.com. You should see it at the top of your screen there. That's badgerfeed.com. All right. So, assuming that everything sounds okay, nobody's complaining in the comments section right now, we will get into the stories and I will start because Max's story is not first this time, and I'm sorry about that, Max. It's just the other guy took number one, so...
Dude, what did I do to you? Did I hurt you in some way?
You didn't chew your food on the microphone like I asked you to.
Yes, I did! Give me a fucking break.
And it was pancakes on top of that. All right, so...
Go make your own, bitch. Sorry.
Okay, let's go. Let's do this.
I told you I don't share my food. Sorry, Brian, go.
No, it's fine. It's fine. That was pretty funny. All right. So, first story. Female California lawmaker behind Me Too push is accused of groping a male staffer. The Me Too movement has been on the forefront of many people's minds since it started months ago. It's hard to believe. It feels like an eternity. When Time magazine named the Silence Breakers as Persons of the Year, Time highlighted women who have been figureheads of the movement. Many female legislators have championed #MeToo, calling out male legislators for alleged inappropriate behavior. One of these legislators is Democrat California Assemblywoman Christina Garcia. Garcia has been a prominent advocate of Me Too. She has spoken about a culture of sexual harassment at the State House, including where senior legislators have allegedly groped her breasts and buttocks. However, the other shoe has proverbially, why am I having a problem with this fucking word? Proverbially dropped, as Garcia now stands accused of groping multiple male staffers while she has been a legislator. Haha. Her main accuser, Daniel Fierro, said that at an assembly softball game back in 2014, Garcia groped his buttocks and attempted to grab his genitals as he turned away from her. At the time, he said that he could tell Garcia was intoxicated, and that's fucked up. Immediately after the incident, he told 2 other staffers about this incident, who later confirmed his account to Politico. 2 other staffers spoke anonymously about Garcia's tendency to grope males while she is drunk. Responding to the incident, Garcia said the following, quote, "Every complaint about sexual harassment should be taken seriously, and I will participate fully in any investigation that takes place. I can also say I have zero recollection of engaging in inappropriate behavior, and such behavior is inconsistent with my values." End quote. While Fierro described the event as, quote, "not a life-changing experience," and that he was, quote, "in shock and embarrassed," he did say that the mandatory sexual harassment training at the Capitol never included an example where the perpetrator was a female and the victim was a male. Shock. He said that he, quote, "didn't have a way to frame it," the incident, that is, end quote. Hopefully, in the future, these types of mandatory sexual assault awareness trainings will include examples where women are the perpetrator and men are the victims. Heck, maybe they should include examples of where men and women can both be perpetrator and victim. There's a really novel idea. For now, though, the report filed on Fierro's behalf started an investigation into Garcia's actions. In the meantime, Garcia will be taking a leave of absence from her assembly duties. While she's away, maybe Garcia should consider watching her alcohol consumption.
Now, maybe she should consider watching a lot of things, including how she talks about this stuff. This is something that I've been kind of waiting for this to happen. The perpetration among women is not lower than the perpetration among men in terms of this kind of behavior. We don't really have accurate statistics on the more violent end of the sexual misconduct spectrum, because a lot of times authorities don't take it seriously when a woman is accused of a violent sexual assault. But in research where you see the respondent answering about their own behavior, women actually admit to more of this kind of like groping and inappropriate hitting on people, like hitting on people in the workplace, things like that. Women admit to it more than men do, because women don't get that if it's inappropriate when men do it, it's also inappropriate when women do it. A lot of them think that it's different when they do it. And this situation may be similar. Now, saying that she doesn't remember this, a lot of people seem to think that's a get out of accountability free card when they, oh, I don't remember doing that. What she's basically saying there is either she was so drunk she blacked out and didn't remember what she did, which for a legislator at a legislative sponsored event, that's pretty bad. That's just as bad as admitting to groping while drunk. But the other thing that she may have been saying is, I do this so much, and it's such a unimportant behavior to me that I don't even remember doing it. It's just a offhanded thing, and I just do it all the time. And why would I think about having done something like that? I'm a girl. How dare you, question my right to do it just because guys aren't allowed to do it? That's the other thing that she could be saying. So yeah, she should watch her drinking, but hell, if she's going to talk about this shit like that, she really ought to watch her mouth, because she's going to end up getting herself in trouble in the long run.
Yeah. She could also have been saying, I don't remember doing it to this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've done it to enough other guys, but I don't remember doing it to this guy. And see, it's all bad. There is no good way to interpret, I don't remember doing that. Now, she could turn around and say, I did not do that, if it was something that she would never do. Or she could turn around and say, I got to get a handle on my drinking, because obviously if I'm doing stuff like this when I'm drinking, I don't need to be drinking. And that would be taking responsibility. It would be taking responsibility after the fact, after failing to take responsibility when she initially should have. But it's still better than, I don't remember doing that. You know, it's one of those things. Everybody that has said that, I don't remember that incident, I don't remember what she's talking about, that always bothers me, because it's a hedging your bets type of behavior that tells everybody that behavior that's being described is within the scope of your behavioral spectrum. You would do something like that. Or you wouldn't say, oh, I don't remember. You'd say, I wouldn't do anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, if she's being falsely accused of groping someone, then maybe Donald Trump's tweet about how this is getting a little out of hand is something that she should be agreeing with. Oh my God, how do you compartmentalize this? Does anyone else have any thoughts on this story?
I'll just say, excuse me, I did a Breaking Badger on this 2 days ago. I'm not sure if anything has really changed since then, but I'll just sort of echo some of the things that Allison said during that little episode we did. Yeah, the fact that she was able to get off on unpaid leave instead of being outright fired. Allison puts that down to female privilege. I think that's what she said. What else did we talk about? Oh yeah, the fact that there's two accusers and two of them essentially described the exact same behavior as that how she would go about trying to grab their crotch. So that lends some credibility to it. God, just why is it that all the creeps are coming out of California?
Oh,
I'm only saying that because I know there are some people from California that are listening to us.
I don't know. I mean, there might be something to it, maybe. But then, a lot of it's in Hollywood, and that's a little unfair in a way, because a lot of it's coming from Hollywood. That's where it started, and Hollywood just happens to be in California. So if it was anywhere else, that's probably where the source of this would be. But what is interesting is when it's happening to the people in political power up there, and but I think it's basically because the entertainment industry essentially is centered in California. But it's not a good look. It's not a good look. So Garcia, I hope that she gets due process, whatever happens.
Of course.
But this is something that I think inevitably was going to happen. Like, you start a witch hunt, and it's only a matter of time before people are calling you a witch. Whether it's true or not, right? You can't expect to be immune to this just because you're female. She expects to be, but I think that this is just sort of like an inevitability of what you started. When you basically say, and she was probably, I haven't seen it, but I bet in her history she was like, we need to just believe women. We just need to believe them, believe victims, And if that turned out to be the case now, she'd say, wait a minute, can we investigate? Because I don't remember doing that, which is what she's saying, right? So yeah.
Speaking of calling her a witch, if you gave her a hat and a broom and painted her green, she'd kind of look like that witch from the Looney Tunes.
Oh, the one that when she would run, like she would dart off screen really fast and the hairpins would be like floating.
Yeah.
That's the one? You remember that one?
With the scraggly hair.
You with the scraggly, wiry hair and that. Yeah, Mike knows the character, right? You watched the Looney Tunes back in the day. You know what I'm talking about.
I did, but I don't remember that.
You don't remember the witch? Oh,
yes.
wait.
And she would cackle, and she had the monster that had the big head, that the top of his head was kind of heart shaped.
I think her name was Witch Hazel. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was Witch Hazel.
Oh, I remember the giant ginger thing. It looks like a big furry tooth.
Gossamer.
Yeah.
It was Gossamer.
Yeah, she was in there was a Halloween special that they would play that had her and that thing and I think a vampire type character.
Yeah, I vaguely recall that.
Yeah,
I just remember the hairpins thing always killed me. I just loved that.
Yeah, and she'd click her heels together and run off, and cackle and yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Here, I just
And then
gave you
she'd
guys
go
an image.
sexually molest Bugs Bunny.
Well, you can't molest the willing. Here, this is for Mike, so that he gets an image, so you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, see what I mean?
Now, wasn't she trying to cook him though?
Of course.
Like everybody
Sure.
was always trying to cook him.
That was the plot of every Looney Tunes thing. So okay, so yeah, the witch from Bugs Bunny. Thanks for that, Max. Throwback. That's bringing back the nostalgia right there. I love the hair. All right, so moving on to the next story. This one annoyed the shit out of me. After 20 years of service as a lollipop man. Now, before we move on, I never heard this term lollipop man before, so I'm just gonna say that at least from my experience, we just call them crossing guards. So if you guys know what a crossing guard is, they're basically like people that help little kids cross the street when they're going to school and when they're coming back, right? But I guess in the UK they call them lollipop man. Lollipop
Maybe
men.
because their signs look like a giant lollipop.
Yeah.
It's to make them more palatable to children.
Yeah, so that's what a lollipop man is, okay? So after 20 years of service as a lollipop man, they should be calling it a lollipop person, those fucking sexists, Brian Broom of East Yorkshire has quit in protest. The 77-year-old man and father of two walked away from his job as a lollipop man, a job more commonly known as a crossing guard here in the States, after being told by the city council that he could no longer give students high fives. Yes, because he couldn't give them high fives. The council argues that giving students high fives could be considered grooming, which refers to the behaviors and actions that child predators use to establish trust with children. Broom, who was previously awarded an Unsung Hero Award by the City Council, calls a decision to ban high fives political correctness gone mad. Broom isn't the only lollipop man to be affected by this high five ban. Colin Spencer of Stockport, age 63, was told by the city council that high fives could distract him from his duties. But after an outpouring of support for Spencer from the community, the council has reversed their decision. The council released the following statement, quote, "Following the recent reports surrounding Stockport Council's lollipop man, Colin Spencer, we want to apologize for the unnecessary concern caused by the issuing of an instruction that was clearly wrong." End quote.
Wait. So they call them lollipop men to make the job more palatable to children. In other words, they don't want kids to see these guys as strangers that they can't approach. They're supposed to trust them and wait to cross the street with them and let them guide them as to when to cross the street and obey them when they say stop or go. But giving high fives is quote unquote grooming because it is a behavior or action used to establish trust with children. Okay, does anybody else see the contradiction here?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to put on my health and safety helmet just to try and figure out how this works. Because they said something about high-fiving could distract him from his duties. But by the time he's out in the middle of the road, he's already done his duty. I mean, I suppose it's like how drivers aren't supposed to hand signal to pedestrians, just in case pedestrians run across the road and don't think of looking for the car that's coming the other way. Maybe if children are going to run across the road because they get, hey, it's that lollipop man I like, let's high five him, and they don't see the car coming. And in that sense, maybe it's the health and safety helmet talking.
Yeah, sure. And that was the second story, Colin Spencer, who they told him that, it could distract, and that's why at least they're not accusing him of pedophilia. Whereas the original guy, Brian Broom, they're saying, "Oh yeah, that could be seen as grooming, and he's been doing this for 20 years." So he's not new to this job. Just to clarify.
I used to do crossing guard duty. I didn't do it for very long, but I did it I used to work as a security guard, and one of the local crossing guards in my area had a heart attack and had to be off duty for like an entire, semester of time. In my security firm, they hired somebody from my security firm to come and be crossing guard, and they didn't like the first person, so then they sent me. And there's a lot of shit they do to crossing guards that does not make sense. Like when you hold your little flag out or your little sign out and you walk out into the street, you're supposed to wait until a break in the traffic to do it. And if there's not a traffic light and you're at stop signs, you're supposed to wait until it's pretty much natural for the traffic to stop anyway. But once you're out there, traffic is not supposed to drive through that area. You are a stop sign. And that's that's the way it's supposed to be. But instead what happens is people see the crossing guard stepping out into the street and they floor it. Especially if they're on the opposite side of the road, going the other direction, so that they figure they can get across before the kids start crossing and everything. You're supposed to walk out halfway across the street, then you motion for the kids to come through after the traffic stops. And I got in trouble for carrying. I had an old hair dryer and I cut the cord off of it, and I just carried it. And a lot of people thought that I was clocking the traffic, and then they would stop. And somebody actually ended up calling and complaining and saying that the crossing guard was going to cause an accident by causing the traffic to do what the traffic is supposed to do when the crossing guard is in the street. And I got in trouble, and they told me to put the hairdryer away and not do that anymore.
I think that's an old Stephen Wright joke where he's like, sometimes when I'm really bored, I just sit on the side of the road, put a hairdryer outside of my window.
That was my inspiration, actually.
Oh, okay.
That's where I figured out, hey, if I do this, it like they're going by so fast on a 25-mile-an-hour road where they do 40 that they can't see it, so they can't tell what it is. So then I just, strapped my camera around my neck and carried that. I didn't actually point it at anybody. I just had my camera, and the camera is pretty recognizable. So people come along and they'd start to pull forward anyway, and then they'd see the camera and they'd stop. But this is the way it is with so traffic guards, like the crossing guards, they got their hands full already, and anything you can do to get the kids to listen is a good idea. I used to have to deal with kids that would ignore me and go running out into the street, and I actually had parents get mad because I grab them by the back of the shirt and haul them back up onto the curb so they didn't get hit by cars. How dare you stop my child from getting hit by a car? That's how he learns, and that's not what was said. It was, keep your hands off my kid. And I was like, okay, next time I'll let him go running out there and get hit. Well, you're liable if that happens. Well, no, you just told me I can't stop him.
You can't learn when you're dead.
No. And getting hit by cars really hurts. Take it from me. It's not fun. But in any case, yeah, these two guys here have basically just been told, because some special snowflake out there is worried, and somebody who doesn't understand their job is trying to micromanage them, that they are not allowed to use a tool that they figured out helps to preserve the children's safety. In a job that it is their job to preserve the children's safety. Like, why have people do this job if you're going to interfere with them like that? It is the stupidest idea. You want to protect the kids, and you're going to put their safety in the hands of an individual. Don't step on that individual's toes. Empower that individual to do their fucking job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll just offer this very quickly. Look, they say that if you high five a child, that's grooming. Something as simple as like waving your hand. I would assume that'd be just the next step down in terms of seriousness of an action that's supposed to be innocent enough as it is. Is that going to be the next thing that you can't do? You're not supposed to acknowledge the kids at all, otherwise that might make them think that you're leering at them as a sexual predator. Look, the only time it would be considered grooming is if you do that thing they do in the NFL where you do the high five and then you spin around and smack them on the ass, or if you do high five and then down low. Oh, whoops! Didn't mean to grab you there, buddy. Here, down low.
I just had an image of Kevin Spacey for some reason.
Oh, jeez.
Well, maybe they're getting their information from trusted sources that know what grooming looks like, such as Vice.com or The Guardian. They have people on their team that know a lot about this, so maybe that's where they're getting it. I just think it's maybe it's a little misapplied, misdirected. But hey, if you've been doing it for 20 years, I guess he was just waiting for the right time to start grooming the kids. And sometimes you just have to wait a little while, like till the moment is right. I guess. I don't know.
And what's he gonna do? Like the halfway across the street, and he's like, "Okay, drop your pants." Like, come on. Well, just everybody wait while I molest this child. I'm just gonna like stand here, no. And that's the only place they see him. Like generally speaking, you're not, in the neighborhood with all of the kids. They don't even all live necessarily in the same neighborhood, or at least the same immediate neighborhood. The idea that this guy's going to be a danger to the kids, even if he did have ill intent, would be kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you live, little Jimmy? No, don't point with your finger.
Yes. All right, I want to read some super chats because I ignored them, and then we can continue. I shouldn't have done that. Zeranx gives us $5 and says, "People from the Mary Sue are probably watching right now, looking for anything they can use against you. Wave hi to them." I'm waving, but I don't think they'll see that.
Yeah, I'm waving, but my hand is actually turned around, and there's only one finger sticking up.
You guys got to be careful of that. I know a guy who was taken in for questioning once for a drive-by greeting. He was accused of waving menacingly. The best part was it was a drive-by greeting that never happened, but and it never happened to a person who wasn't supposed to be in the area. But yeah, so I know a guy that was taken in for questioning for a drive-by greeting that never happened.
There you go. Was he by any chance?
You're fucking a white male!
When that happened?
Yes, actually,
Okay.
White male.
Well, that explains a lot. Joey Jojo gives us $2 and says, "This is my 30th February 14th alone. Please kill me." No,
hey, man.
I'm not gonna do that.
I'm
man.
sorry to hear that, but thankfully you're not alone. You're among a lot of people that have experienced several Valentine's Day alone. Like up until like a year ago, it was going to be my 22nd Valentine's Day in a row where I had nobody. So I understand what it's like, but there are people here to talk to.
There you go. Okay, what? Okay, let me see if I can read this. Natufian Grain Harvest gives us $5, thank you, and says, "If we had a Valentine's Day for men in this culture, we would still make it about women, just like we've started doing with Father's Day." That's right. That's why we need to make Steak and a Blowjob Day a real thing. March 14th, ladies, just saying, think about your man. And also men who want to do something for their men, do, steak and a BJ. It's easy. Medium rare, and I will, you'll figure out the rest. Just listen to the body and respond. All right, so
the rest should not be rare.
Call it Palentine's Day, where you hang out with your pals.
Yeah.
There we go.
Hokey Bukisa gives us $5 and says, "Men aren't excused. Show me the police report, fag." I'm not sure what that is, but he's above. I mean, the word fag might be fag. I'm not sure, but that was I think that was in comment on the previous story about Garcia and the Me Too thing.
Yeah, I know. Somebody in the chat must have said that men get excused for this, because I can't imagine what would happen if the same situation was with a male instead of a female legislator.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, we can imagine. They would no longer be good enough. They would no longer be smart enough, and gosh darn it, people would stop liking them.
Cyberzerk gives us 50 sex. That's cool.
Yay, we got our sex.
Yeah, we got some sex.
Yeah, we did the sex joke.
Yeah, again, he says they could give the crossing guard's job to a grid girl.
Yeah, that would definitely get some of the kids' attention.
Yeah, that wouldn't be awkward at all.
The kids would be like, glad to see my tax dollars are going to good stuff.
She'd be out in the middle going, come on, get across. And then the boys would all be going, did you say something?
But on the plus side, the traffic would stop.
Yes, the traffic would stop.
So there is that. All right. So did you guys want to say anything else about this Lollipop Man story before we move on to the next one? Nobody? Okay.
No.
JoJo wants to say something, apparently.
I second that. I concur.
Yes, JoJo has hot takes. Hot takes on the stories. All right, Max, I'm going to hand it off to you. It's your turn. This is your story. Let's do it.
All right, almost every day in North America, a story regarding #MeToo shows up in the news, and every single time there are people on both sides who should not be talking that just can't help saying stupid shit. For example, last Saturday, excuse me, the Washington Post released an article titled, "I Can Hear Myself Talking."
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'll mute myself, but I don't know what that is. That's a glitch or something. Go ahead.
Excuse me, I got a bit of a maple syrup in my throat. For example, last Saturday, the Washington Post released an article titled, "Trump Decries Lack of Due Process for Men Accused of Sexual Harassment Abuse." The first line of the article is as follows. President Trump on Saturday appeared to side with men accused of domestic abuse or sexual misconduct. While that sentence may seem harmless to most people, people in our community know what the Washington Post is trying to say. Trump sides with potential sex criminals. In respect to the other side, the article was written in response to a tweet Trump made about the supposed lack of due process for accused men. Quote, "People's lives are being shattered and destroyed by a mere allegation. Some are true and some are false. Some are old and some are new. There is no recovery for someone falsely accused. Life and career are gone. Is there no such thing any longer as due process?" And now here's my controversial moment of the show. While I think we here at HBR agree with the general sentiment of his tweet, I think we can agree that maybe Donald Trump isn't the person that should be speaking out about this issue. And let's just ignore his potential innocence or guilt regarding past sexual exploits. The fact of the matter is that he has been accused of sexual misconduct in the past, and those accusations are still being hung over his head daily. And this could just be my personal thought, but it's like, imagine, even though, for example, Michael Jackson, I think he was 100% innocent, I still wouldn't want him speaking out about issues involving child abuse, right? I hope you guys understand what I mean. But moving on. In response to this tweet, the Washington Post suggests that President Trump is, quote, "seemingly at odds with the movement that in recent months has led to the downfall of several powerful men accused of abhorrent behavior." As well, they say later on in the article that advocates for abuse victims say that false allegations are rare but do occur, and that it is also not uncommon for men to assert that wives or partners falsely claim abuse to gain leverage in divorce or custody matters. Representative Jackie Spire, the Democrat from California, made the following response to his tweet, quote, "The new mantra is 'we believe the women,' and he is frozen in 'I believe the men.' He's beyond rehabilitation in my view." Yeah, that's not what he said, you stupid. Okay. White House spokesman did not respond to a request for comment about which cases Trump was referring to, and whether he also thinks that the lives of accusers can be shattered and destroyed. It is speculated that he was making this tweet in response to now former White House aide Rob Porter being fired over domestic abuse allegations.
I'm going to disagree with you in terms of who should be speaking out about this. I think that Trump is exactly the person who should be speaking out about this. And I think Michael Jackson would have been exactly the person who should be speaking out about false allegations of child abuse, just like the family that was falsely accused in the satanic daycare case. Actually, the two families, I think, were falsely accused in the satanic daycare cases. When something terrible happens to you, you have the right to speak out about it and a responsibility to speak out about it. And people have a responsibility to listen and consider what you have to say. With regard to the accusations against Trump, they are as senseless and disproved as the accusations against Michael Jackson. There has never been any credible evidence come forward for any accusation of sexual misconduct involving Trump. In fact, there have been alleged victims who have said, no, this did not happen. And you've got media ignoring their statements and to continue to assert that it did. And, oh, well, she can't talk about it. Oh, well, she's prevented from telling the truth. Oh, well, it's just because she said it didn't happen doesn't mean it didn't happen. This is bullshit. And if it can happen to the president of the United States, and it has happened to two, and not that Bill Clinton was entirely proved innocent of everything, but there were allegations against Clinton for which there was no credible evidence. And there are still people dragging those out along with the credible ones to pad their accusations against him. This is out of hand. It has been out of hand all my life. I don't think I know any point that I've been aware of news stories about stuff like this where there hasn't been a believe the woman attitude in the public, and there hasn't been a believe the woman attitude in the media. This is extremely, to borrow one of their words, problematic. If we cannot discuss what the falsely accused go through, if we cannot allow the falsely accused to discuss what they go through, then we cannot deal with that issue, and we cannot trust any accuser, because every accusation is a potential lie. Every accuser is a potential liar. Every accuser is Schrodinger's false accuser. Just the same as they say every individual who is accused is Schrodinger's rapist or Schrodinger's sexual assailant.
Yeah, just for the record, I want to say that when I say not being able to speak up about it, I don't mean not being able to speak out in your defense. Obviously, when somebody accuses you of something, you absolutely have the goddamn right to say, no, this isn't true, and be afforded all the same rights of like due process and making sure that these allegations are investigated to the fullest extent. I'm just saying, like, when it comes to like somebody like Trump, even like, let's say, like I said, regardless of his innocence, I tend to lean on the side that, yeah, he's probably, there's a lot of smoke, but there's no fire. I tend to, it's just like, until these things are taken care of, I tend to just think maybe what you should do just to avoid like millions of people calling you a hypocrite, which is what everybody was doing in the Washington Post article, just because like Trump, nowadays he's always having so many people coming out and criticizing him at every possible turn. If you want to try and minimize that, maybe this is one place where you can just sort of choose when to speak and when not to speak. And I just think in this particular
right. So can I get in there real quick? I think what Max is talking about is not about whether or not something is morally or ethically right or wrong, but rather it's about tactics, like whether or not this is a wise choice as opposed to whether it's the right choice. And I think that you guys are you're not in disagreement per se, but
no, I don't think this is an unwise choice either.
No, I think that what I was going to say is I think where Max is coming from is a position of being a little bit more like risk avoidant, like, well, maybe this is a bit risky for what I'm doing, but Hannah's point is that it, I think anyway, first of all, it doesn't matter whether Trump says something on it or not, because they're just going to nail him for something else because the press is just against him. So it doesn't really matter. So he may as well, in the words of Jordan Peterson, tell the truth, because, and that is what he said is not untrue. And that was actually kind of nice to see someone sticking up for people who are being accused, most of whom are men. And it's good to see that. That's why when I wrote my little bit about it, I chose this story not because I wanted to talk about the original tweet, even though it pleased me to see it, but I wasn't really going to talk about it. I was just going to say, well, yeah, that's a good thing that he said that. Okay, but I mean, it's just sentiment, right? Like when you're on Twitter and you're saying this is kind of a witch hunt, things are getting out of hand, you're just expressing a sentiment. Trump's not saying I'm going to make a law or do anything. So I was like, well, it's nice that he said it, but there's no story there. But then when the Washington Post made this article, and a lot of other people have been talking about what he said, and they basically said, oh, he's defending rapists and abusers, and he's like for, beating women and bashing a violent bitch or whatever. Then I said, okay, we need to talk about it because it's about the press response. It's about the media response to it. And I want people to be aware that when you see this stuff, it's not an accident. These people are choosing targets and they're going after them. And it almost, the fact that I think Trump would say this, and I know that there are people who would say he doesn't think before he tweets anything. But I tend to lean towards more where like Scott Adams is at, where he thinks, a lot of this stuff is pretty conscious, like not necessarily four-dimensional chess, but I mean more like, you know what, I got to say something about this. And then he does. And then like people respond to it. Like on Twitter, there are people who support this idea that you can't just like go around pointing the finger and screaming rapist or, this guy did this or, whatever, and then expect justice just get handed out without due process, without people, doing things in a responsible and mature way. And I think that the fact that he does that is something that's worth acknowledging. So I give him credit for putting the tweet out. It took guts to do. And you know what? Maybe it didn't really take a lot of guts to do, because if somebody's going to if the media is going to rake you over the coals no matter what you say on Twitter for any reason, like remember Kofefe? Like you could literally just put a word that doesn't mean, and they would have fucking, archaeologists and cryptozoologists come over and try to translate these runes to figure out what they actually mean, and it's negative. So, there's like no way that there's anything that he could have done or said that wouldn't have ended up bad anyway. But why don't we just look at what was objectively being said and see, okay, so the Washington Post has a problem with innocent people being wrongly convicted. Sounds like, 1930s Alabama to me, so.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think they would have taken issue with the specific statement that Trump made. I think they would have taken issue with that no matter who said it, except maybe if Obama or Hillary Clinton said it, then they would have let it go under the radar and buried it so that people didn't think too much about it. But they wouldn't have said, especially like if Hillary Clinton changed the words from men accused of domestic abuse or sexual misconduct and put in Democrats accused of conspiracy to take down Trump, and just change that much of it, and it to the Washington Post and these other news media, it would have been a genius statement. They would have totally changed their attitudes about it. People's lives are being shattered and destroyed by mere allegation. Some are true and some are false. Some are old and some are new. There's no recovery for someone falsely accused. Life and career are gone. You could say the same thing with regards to any type of accusation that is a serious accusation. Is there no such thing any longer as due process? And that, it wouldn't matter who said it. It matters what it's being said about. Mm-hmm. They don't want due process when it comes to these types of allegations, and they're trying to actually get rid of due process altogether.
Well, that's what the after show. Citizens. That's what the after show topic is all about. It's entitled "Why Rape Cases Should Not Be Subject to Reasonable Doubt."
And see, that's been a goal. I've been talking about this for a couple of years now. This attack on due process rights in the cases of allegations of intimate partner and sexual violence. Those attacks on due process rights are the wedge. The authoritarian end of the political spectrum does not want ordinary citizens to have due process rights. They want their government, their authoritarian power, to be able to come in and say, you are accused, you stand accused of committing crimes against the state, and therefore you are guilty. Here's your punishment. No trial, no due process, no reasonable doubt, no nothing, no defense, no nothing. And the way to acclimate people to that, the way to get people to accept anything, is to frame it in terms of protecting women. And so they went after it through intimate partner and sexual violence allegations. And they hammered and hammered and hammered at this idea that accusers are victims and victims have rights that everybody else doesn't have, and that it's damaging and harmful to the victim to have a genuine search for the truth. That is where we are today. That is how we have gotten to this point today. And this is, I'm not surprised at all to see political pundits now condemning the idea of due process in those particular areas, because that was the goal of the push in the first place. And eventually, the goal is to get rid of people's attachment to it altogether, to acclimate people to the idea that the state can just say, well, you did this thing and now you're getting punished, whether you did or not.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Just two quick things. I just want to echo what Brian said, just to get the point across. Yeah, my issue is one of just pure tactics. Obviously, when it comes to the issue of due process and protecting it, obviously it's a very important discussion and it should be out there everywhere possible. I'm just wondering, like, how, in terms of trying to get that message out effectively, who should be preaching it ahead of other people, and what time should we be making that?
Well, just don't be a fucking white male while you do it. But I mean, if you're talking tactics, it's difficult because, tactically speaking, it's difficult to get sympathy for people who are accused of assaulting women because of how gynocentric we are. Yeah. So if you bring up like, hey, we don't have any evidence this is happening, people will freak out, even if there isn't any evidence that it's happening. So it makes it almost like you have to just stop. You have to throw your hands up and just say, you know what? I don't care about your gynocentrism. I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to say what I feel, and it's going to bother you, but maybe eventually you'll realize that what you're doing is not helping. I'm trying to bring to light something. Maybe we can't even begin to figure out how much of this is true, okay, until we talk honestly about it existing, the fact that there are people who make false allegations, and they could do so for a myriad of reasons. If we can't acknowledge that that's possible, that somebody could be lying about somebody else in order to hurt them, okay, then we can't even figure out how many people do it. Like, somebody might say, well, like, what was it? The old feminist stat is that, less than 4% of women lie about rape or whatever. Where does that number come from? They said
2%, and it actually was from a speech made by a police chief who basically pulled the number out of his ass.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was it. But
thank you, based mom.
Here's the thing. When we talk about strategy, there are many aspects to strategy. All right. If you or I say something, we say it to our audience. We say it to our Twitter followers. We say it to our Facebook friends. We say it to our social media associates, basically. And if we're lucky, it gets repeated through retweets or reposts or whatever, depending on what social media we're talking about. But that's it. That's our audience. Trump says it. He says it to hundreds of thousands of people through his Twitter feed, but also through the media freaking out about it. And there are thousands of people who read his tweet because it was published in total in that news story. And they may not necessarily make the connection right off the bat that what is actually being objected to there is the idea that we should, before we penalize someone on the basis of an accusation, we should make sure we know the truth first. That we're actually seeking the facts in a situation before jumping to conclusions and acting on those conclusions. That's being objected to. That's what's being objected to. And they may not get that right away. But they will see that, and it'll come back to them every time they have to deal with something like this in their own circle of friends and family. And the sad thing is, this is so frequent that everybody knows somebody who's dealt with it. Whether it's a significant accusation, a serious accusation, or something minor, everybody knows somebody who has dealt with something like this. So when they hear that statement, or they read that statement, and they maybe don't think about it right away, it is going to stick in the back of their mind, and they are going to start wondering, hey, the hell happened to due process?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, because even though it's Donald Trump, he is the president, and he has the entire world focusing in on his every word. And even though you got a whole bunch of different radical leftist news publications saying how terrible a person he is, that statement is going to stay in the back of people's minds. It's going to be something that they're going to be considering, especially because it's in like, the issue of rape is so much within the public consciousness right now.
It's not just even though, it's because the media gets their panties in a bunch every time he talks. When he talks, more people hear it. This is something that a lot of people don't get. This is all of the people in the president shouldn't tweet crowd. Okay, there's two good reasons why this president should tweet. One of them is because he can bypass the media. He can get statements out that the media would otherwise ghost. That's important. That's important for any politician. But the other thing is, by getting their panties in a bunch and getting them to freak out about it, he engages the Streisand effect every single time. The Streisand effect happened with this. You can be guaranteed that there are a lot of left-wingers that heard this statement or read this statement only because the news media got their panties in a bunch over it. They don't watch his feed. They can't stand him, right? He's the most hated president since Ronald Reagan on the left. But unless you're talking to Nancy Pelosi and she's for some reason still stuck on Bush, maybe like secret lesbian or something. But in any case, a lot of these people only heard this statement because every time he talks, the media gets their panties in a bunch. So it's not just in spite of, it's because of. That's why I can't agree that it's a bad strategy. Now, if it was my buddy that went through the 7 years in hell story, there would be people that if he said, hey, due process is a dying thing, they'd be like, well, you just said that because you went through all these accusations and we don't know that they were all false. Maybe he might not get it across to as many people because like the rest of us, he's just, he's nobody. We're all nobody, right? But somebody that every time they talk, the media gets their panties in a bunch and they amplify the statement all over the world, that's a different story.
True that. Let me go through the super chats real quick because they're kind of overtaking me a little bit. Number 13 gives us £5 and says, "I'm here for the doctor. Notice me, senpai."
You are hereby noticed.
All right, there you go, number 13. You have been noticed. Chris Stewart, he gave us 3 super chats, each one $10 for a total of 30. Thank you, Chris, so much for that. He says, "Do you think there is going to be a wave of female guilt in our future as a consequence for all of this sort of shit? I don't mean..."
Sorry, go on.
"I don't mean merely becoming sympathetic towards male rights. Rather, I mean an upswell of women trying to overcompensate for stuff like this, also becoming distrustful and contemptuous of their own gender, like male feminists are,
No.
like male feminists are towards men."
No.
It could happen. It could happen the same way that white guilt happened. And if it does, it's going to happen with the same types of people. But it's not going to be any more universal than the white guilt syndrome is. It's going to be people who take everything too far, or people who are faking their compassion. And it's like I see that with the whole white guilt thing. You have people who take things too far, and then you have people who are faking not being racist by displaying white guilt. and that's what you'll see with women. And there will be women that just act with common sense. There will be women who figure out that they got to grow up if they want to live in society, and there will be women who celebrate getting the chance to grow up and catch up and experience the types of success that men experience. But that's just the way things work in society. I don't think that there will be a I don't think there will be a population-wide backlash. I know that there are a lot of MGTOW that think there's going to be a population-wide backlash, but because it is opposing genders in a mostly heterosexual world, I don't think that's going to happen, because sex is going to get in the way of it, relationships are going to get in the way of it, and people basically, when those two things are in play, have a tendency to forgive too much and forget too much, and that'll happen as well.
The whole reason the white guilt thing and the cis guilt thing and the able whatever guilt thing came many generations after the male guilt thing, sort of the sequence of events sort of tells you that the reason they came up with the white guilt thing. Well, look, the feminists were sort of going, men need to be guilty, men deserve to be guilty, men have all kinds of reasons to feel guilty. And then one day someone got through to them, sort of said, hey, do you rich white women have anything to feel guilty about? And they thought about it and went, no, of course not. We got nothing. Are you sure there's nothing? No, nothing at all. What about brown people? What? Okay, right, fair enough. We'll cipher all of our guilt into brown people, and now we feel better. Now we've balanced the system perfectly. This whole fucking white guilt thing and all the other guilt things is so they don't have to feel any guilt about men.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
That's
sure.
An amazing point.
That's a good way of putting that.
Sorry, just very quickly, I just want to say, in respect to me laughing at Chris Stewart's question, I was being facetious. I will say that if something like female guilt happens, it's not going to happen anytime soon. But if it does, I'm sure there will be a certain segment of women, like, because women aren't automatons; they're capable of independent thought, and I'm sure that some of them will realize, "Oh crap, what have we done?" And they'll try to be a little bit more open-minded.
I have a thought about that too. But first, Ratha in the chat is saying that Mike is coming in a little low volume. So,
and I just wanted to deny any and all connection to independent thought.
I'll raise his volume a bit on my end here. So Mike.
No, I can do it. I have hardware. I think I should be a bit louder now. You should have heard me getting louder during that.
Yep, I just
did.
Yep,
that was louder.
You were louder. Okay, so let me know how that sounds. All right, so one thing I wanted to say is about this comment, because I think it is a really interesting question that he brings up, and I've thought about this myself. Collectively, I don't think women will have collective guilt in the same way that men do. And I think there's a good reason for it. And I actually wouldn't want that. Like, if we want to make things better, I don't think that people feeling terrible about themselves for shit that they're not really responsible for is the way to do it. That's shame, and guilt is not the method that I want to use if I wanted to make the world better. It would be more about compassion and, taking an interest in the next generation, like some kind of it should come from a place like that, right? But the reason why I don't think there would be collective guilt anyway on the part of women is because women didn't evolve that way in the same way that men did. So men evolved to protect women and children, right? And also to, basically help them survive, and at the cost of their own life. Right? At their own health and their own life for many, 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 many thousands of years. And only recently, and I mean like a fraction of time, have we been able to live in a society where men don't have to throw their lives away. But the instinct is still there, right? So men can easily, you wouldn't even need necessarily to guilt them into it, can easily feel responsible for women's protection, safety, and happiness. It's easy to do because it's something that we've been doing since there have been people, right? And it's actually something that men had to do if they wanted to be sexually successful and if they wanted to reproduce. So whatever was in them from the beginning, whatever was in their genes that said, protect this woman and she'll give you babies. And what that has gone on and on and on. And we who are here on the planet now only exist because there were generations of men that came before us that said, make her happy, she'll give you babies. So it's only natural that most of us, men that is, would still think, make her happy and she'll give you babies. So if she complains or if she says something is happening or she feels uncomfortable or she feels distressed, the majority of men are going to feel responsible. And you can easily turn that into guilt. It's easy to do. Women, on the other hand, don't necessarily have to do that. They haven't evolved to care about what happens to men. They pick one that is going to be the best, to father their children, and then they go from there. It's not that they don't care. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that they're not evolved to have to. So what you're going to get is any women that do take a responsibility or they feel an obligation to help men and to care about them will not do so from a place of guilt per se, and they won't do it on a collective mass scale level. It's going to be people like the people on this show, like Prim Reaper, like Hannah, like Anna Cherry, like Allison, like Karen. It's not a lot of them, but they're out there, right? They're figuring this out. But I don't think on a collective level you're gonna get that. You're gonna get, if you guys meet someone that's like the Honey Badgers or like Aiden or like Bunny Blackwell or any of these other women, then that's fortunate. And I'm not saying that women are bad people. I just don't think that they necessarily needed to evolve that way, and men did. So it's easy to make men feel guilty and feel responsible because it's what we've been. It's in our genes to do that. With women, it's not necessary. You can make women feel guilty about children. You can make them feel sympathetic towards that because that was the place where their responsibility comes in. It comes down to what have men been responsible for since the beginning of time versus what have women have been responsible for. And how does that affect the way we think now? And I think that's why I wouldn't scoff at that, at Chris Stewart's statement, but that's why I think, at least where I'm coming from, I think that's the reason why things are as they are. And why collective guilt on the part of women as a concept in the same way that it is on the part of men, it's not likely to happen.
No, what you're more likely to see, actually, if you look at the history of women's activism, and I'm not just talking about activism that is women's rights activism, or feminist activism that purports to be women's rights activism, which wasn't ever really about rights. It doesn't have anything to do with guilt, even when women are engaging in activism on behalf of a segment of society. Like women who stepped into the breach in the gay rights movement were usually mothers and sisters and friends and other family members of men who they had seen picked on by society, or discriminated against, otherwise mistreated, that sort of walked with them in their activism, not because they were guilty over something, but because they saw something bad happening to people they cared about and wanted something done. The same thing with, God, I can't think of her name, the woman that got a bunch of reforms done in women's prisons in the UK. And then there was another one.
Fry. I think it was Elizabeth Fry. Yeah.
She wasn't guilty over what the other women were experiencing. She was appalled at what the other women were experiencing. And this is what you see with men's rights activism. I come from a long line of busybodies. And that's the nicest way I can put it. The women in my family, when they see something going on that somebody is getting the really short end of the stick, and there's something that can be done, and we can see, well, if this would be done, it would fix the problem. It's we don't have the ability to shut off, hey, somebody ought to do something about this, and then walk away. It's oh, somebody ought to do something about this. Well, you're somebody. Get your ass in gear. And that's where it goes. And it's my mother was like that. My grandmothers were like that. My great grandmothers were like that. My aunts were like that. That's just the way it is, and I'm pretty sure that that is ingrained into the female psyche as part of that evolution that Brian was talking about. Men get things done, and women push. Women
Yeah.
push and push, and when we see something, it's kind of our function to point and sound off like a siren. Hey, there is something wrong over here. This needs fixed. This is what I think needs to be done. Put up a fence so these wild beasts can't get into our property and kill our children. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
That's
I don't
that's what
think that-
nagging is.
Yeah, that's what nagging is. Nagging is that gone awry. It's where it's like that your fight or flight hitting when there isn't a real threat. Nagging is your get her done. Hey, get over here and get her done instinct hitting when there is nothing to get her done.
Yeah.
Or
It's like-
nothing of vital importance.
Yeah, it's like babies cry on a frequency that is really irritating to parents that makes them want to make the baby stop, right? Women nag on a frequency that is really irritating to their boyfriends and husbands, and they just want to make it stop. So they go do the thing that she's nagging him about. I joke, but not really.
Incidentally, nag is a euphemism that everyone still uses for dominate. When men do it to women, it's called dominating. When women do it to men, it's called nagging. It's so fucking weird.
I want to read the rest of the super chats. There was something. Oh yeah, no, there was something I wanted to say first. Rico Champagne in the chat said, "They will out of self-interest." I think it's kind of like goes back a ways. I think what he's saying is that women will, look out for men out of self-interest. Essentially, become maybe they'll embrace some female collective guilt. I don't think that it would happen on a collective level, but I do know what he's saying. This is something that does happen usually with traditionalist women, tradcon women or trad thoughts. They will do that out of self-interest because they want babies and they don't like the state of men. So what they're doing is they basically say, we need to fix men. I don't like the way they are now. They're too many betas, too many soy boys, whatever it is their problem is. But I don't like the way men are now, and I hate that feminists are attacking masculinity because they're making men not like how I want them. So I'm going to complain, but I can't just complain, right? So instead, I'm going to come forward and sympathize and say, we need our men. We need our men to be manly, but and yes, maybe a lot of them actually just care that their men are just men, like they have sons and they care about how their sons grow up. But there's also probably a good number of them that are doing it out of self-interest, as this guy says, which is basically to say, I want a manly man, I can't find him, how do I change this? I'll attack feminism or whatever. Actually, I'll say I care about men,
I ran into this on Twitter right before I've had a bit of a cold for the last week, and I haven't been doing anything that I didn't have to do. But about a week ago, maybe a little week and a half ago, I got into it. There was a maybe prominent, I think, tradcon Twitter user that she tweeted out some he for she statement, but it wasn't framed as he for she. It was, we support men by telling them how to do things for women. That was essentially the gist of the statement, and it was almost but not quite to the level of, we support men's right to choose ruggedness if that's what they want. Because like feminists have been attacking male ruggedness, and they feminists will say, well, we have this in common with men's rights activists. We hate male gender roles. Well, no, not exactly. What men's rights activists advocate that men should not be told they have to be rugged, but feminists go a step further and say, well, you're not allowed to be rugged because that's telling men that they have to be rugged if you're rugged. Well, no, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
So we have tradcons saying, real men this and real men that, and we support real men. We support men's right to protect and love, and they recognize that it is an aspect of masculinity to protect their families and protect their communities and provide that men do this by nature. But then they turn around and treat it as an indictment of men who choose not to, or an indictment of acknowledging that this is not necessarily universal with men. Yeah, it's good to support, it's good to be grateful, it's good to acknowledge and celebrate when men do good things, but it is not good to turn around and say men who live for themselves are evil, because they're not. As long as they're not hurting anybody, they're not evil. They're just living for themselves. You don't have to get married, you don't have to have kids, you don't have to support a woman, you don't have to dedicate your life to other people to be of value as a human being. You're a human being. You're still a human being, even if you don't do all of those things. And that's my big beef with TradCons. And boy, did that get blown the hell out of proportion. Like, it literally lasted for a whole week. That's the only time I've ever had a Twitter fight last for an entire week that didn't involve TERFs. And they got to, like, they bent over backwards and twisted themselves into pretzels, coming up with arguments as to why I was an asshole for pointing out that telling men they have to serve women in order to be considered real men is not support for men.
Yeah.
It just blew my mind.
So
I mean,
I know Max has to.
I don't hate TradCons, and I don't think TradCons are necessarily mutually exclusive to MRAs. We have overlap, but we are definitely two different groups, and there are going to be areas where we are totally incompatible, and that's one of them.
Absolutely. Max needs to leave. He has to study for a midterm, right? Max? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, I got to drop out to go study to,
Are you hearing yourself still, Max? Are you getting an echo?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, good. I know you were earlier, so I wasn't sure if it's me or it's just. I think it's just Discord being goofy. All right. Well, Max, good luck on that. We'll take it from here. I think I can handle it.
All right, cheers, man.
All right,
see you
man.
later, guys. See you next Tuesday.
Okay, so wait, he's cussing. I know what that means. All right, so anyway, someone in the chat in Twitch said something that I want to respond to. Leetoll77 said, wait, the Badgers are against leftist feminism, and yet they also disagree with the right wing who attack feminism? Yes, the thing is, both... Hannah went into already, detail about this. The thing is, feminists and tradcons both try to tell men what they should be doing. And what we are doing is, and they're both gynocentric. In fact, feminism isn't that much different from traditionalism in a lot of ways. In that it puts women first, it wants to protect them, and so on, while simultaneously claiming that traditionalists or right-wingers are against all of those things. But obviously that's bullshit. They both put women first. They're both gynocentric. They have a slightly different way of seeing things. Feminists tell men that they should not be restricted by these box-like gender roles of having to prove masculinity all the time, which is a bullshit claim, but it does kind of ring true because traditionalists do often say men should be like X, okay? But the thing is, most of where that comes from is other women, not men. And what we advocate for, at least me, but I'm pretty sure the rest of you guys wouldn't disagree with this, is men should just be whoever they want to be. Not what feminists say, which is when they say men shouldn't have to be, men. They should be able to do whatever they want. But when in actual fact, what feminists are saying is men should be more like women, because that's in practice, that's what's actually happening. And then tradcons say men should be men. They have to serve women. They have to take manly jobs, right? And we say bullshit to both of those. Whatever you want to do, you do, okay? But you also have to understand that a lot of what they're fighting about is women's perspective on men. They actually haven't even asked for male input on this, So they don't know what it is men want. They just think they know what men should be. And this is again, goes back to what I was saying before about how we've evolved to serve women. Feminism wouldn't be able to make any progress at all if it wasn't for the fact that men cared about women enough to allow this to perpetuate and help it grow. And tradcons just do the same thing. The only difference being is that tradcons tend to at least honor men. Like, they'll give them credit for doing what they're supposed to do, while feminists will never do that. Right? They'll just continue to blame men until the fucking black hole swallows the solar system. Like, they just won't ever quit. Or the sun
They'll
gets
honor
really big or
men
whatever.
until men expect it. What started that fight was there was a series of statements. One person said they wished that there would be some appreciation when they're a protector, when they act in the role of protector. And there was a MGTOW who came in and said, that's all I'm saying. And then he went on and he said, this is that a reward was necessary, meaning that appreciation that the previous person mentioned, that kind of reward encourages the positive behavior. It encourages people to do things for each other. Whereas if someone is just mooching, essentially, it eventually discourages assistance, and it embarrasses the person. It makes the person look bad that's been helping. If you let someone walk all over you for a long time, you look like an idiot. And one of the TradCon women came along and said, if you expect a reward for your protection, you don't deserve one. And I took issue with that. Like, I'm sorry, but if you expect gratitude, it does not preclude gratitude. It doesn't mean you don't deserve gratitude. It means that you are smart enough to know that if somebody continually asks you for favor after favor, or takes advantage of you for favor after favor, and you just keep doing it, that you're going to get walked all over, that you're being taken advantage of, and that person is never going to do anything for themselves. It doesn't have anything to do with being mercenary or being an asshole. You're not an asshole for expecting somebody to say thank you. You're an asshole for expecting somebody to do things for you over and over and over again, never expecting anyone to say thank you. And that led to a week-long pissing match between TradCon women and MGTOWs, myself, several of my followers, and I swear to God, TradCon men have aspects to them that are just like feminist men. They even went as far as saying things that they would have said were misogynistic things if any guy had said it to one of the women on their side. That's how bad it was. And it's as soon as you expect to be treated with some gratitude, as soon as you expect to be treated like a human being for what you're doing, it's the same reaction on both sides. What are you talking about? You're a piece of shit. You owe us this.
Right. So did you wreck them? Were you all like...
It got to the point where it was... Oh, you have to play that again. I didn't realize you were going to do sound effects.
Oh, yeah. This is Hannah on Twitter.
This is Sparta!
It went out with a fizzle. It ended up to the point where they got to a point where they didn't have any arguments, and they just started talking shit. Or one person started hand waving verbally, and then it went into a long discussion about circumcision, which really went downhill from there.
Right.
Not an argument.
So I got to get through these super chats because there could be some more interesting conversation. This is good, guys. Thanks for sending all these great messages. Like, I like talking about the news, but I like getting into, like, some of the other stuff that's sort of bubbling under the surface of, like, what's happening, the ideas. So Chris Stewart gives us $10. Again, this is the third part of his message. Adding an addendum, he says, knowing the history of my super chats, I want to let you know that my last 2 super chats is purely about normal life, not my usual kink stuff. I don't know what he's talking about in terms of the kink stuff, but yeah, we'll go with that. So being distrustful of women on Twitter. And then number 13 gives us another £2. This is the guy who asked Mike to notice him, and he says, what is the lyric at the end of The Ragening? I don't know the answer to that question, but Mike does.
Is Honey Badger rips the face off the puppet master. Chews it up like a horny bastard. Spits it out into your copy pasta. the honey badger. It's sort of sung in a compound accent that doesn't really exist.
That isn't it the panda accent? I thought it was anyway.
No, it's whatever accent will make the rhymes work.
Okay, right. So it's
Like horny bastard only works in a certain accent, and it only rhymes with all the other things if you say it in that accent.
well, there you go.
That's why no one knows what I'm saying, because I'm cutting a lot of corners there for the sake of forced rhymes.
I learned something. And Chris Stewart gives us another $5 and says, I hope people don't think I want this sort of collective guilt thing to happen. It's the reason I compared the idea to male feminists. Well, the thing is with male feminists is they are happy to engage in that collective guilt thing because, again, this is about sexual success, in my opinion, and male feminists, I'm not saying that they can't succeed any other way, because the fact is male feminists piss me off, but I actually do have sympathy for them because they're in a position where they're trying to navigate a world that has told them that the world sucks and it's their fault, and they're the ones that are carrying an immense amount of male guilt. And they think that all men should feel as terrible as they do, and this is why they end up lashing out on other men. And while they still make me angry, especially guys like Jackson Katz and I forget Michael Kimmel and so on, I feel bad for them because they're not free. They're really just shackled, like they're totally on the plantation, right? And it's upsetting. But the thing is, they're also still, at least the ones that are heterosexual, they're still looking for sexual success, and they are perhaps buying into the idea that serving women in this way is how they'll get it. It's like Jordan Peterson said, very sneaky. It's very sneaky. So I think that sort of implies intent, and I don't want to do that. But I do think that in many cases it is, but I don't think in all cases. I think that male feminists, a lot of times they just think that what they're doing is what's best. They think that they're being pragmatic, and it's just really easy to get them to feel guilty. And this is how come male feminists can be real frustrating people to work with, to talk to. So those are my thoughts.
I get what
anyway.
Chris was saying. He's worried about women in the men's rights movement turning into a female version of male feminists. And and I can see that. I can see that worry because I see two distinct groups of male feminists. There's the male feminists that you just described. The ones that they are the way they are because they think it's the right thing to do, and they have that collective guilt because it's been imposed on them by their belief system, and so they live by that. But there are feminists who are feminists to control other people for no other reason than to control other people, and there are people who are religious for the same reason. And feminism is very close. It has a lot of parallels to religion. You look at a dogma like that, you can use it first and foremost, if you choose to manipulate the people around you by imposing guilt on them for not following it as well as you think they should. And the male feminists that I run into that really piss me off are the ones who will lecture, they'll lecture me for not womening right. I get that all the time on Twitter from male feminists. It was very interesting to get it from male tradcons, I'll tell you that. But this is something that I don't think that in terms of guys Take Down MRAs on Twitter is a really good example. This guy, now he's a troll, and if you start proving that he lies all the time, he'll block you. But
we say he, but
habit.
it may well be several people. We don't
Yeah,
know.
it may be a they. But that
Could be bots.
That account has a regular habit of shaming men for as a means of controlling their thoughts and their behavior and everything, and shaming women for womening wrong. And that one, I don't believe that the entity or people or whatever behind that account are in any way, shape, or form cowed into being feminists. That one and several that are associated with it, that group, that's a distinct effort at power and control and manipulation. And this isn't something that I would say is necessarily applicable to men's rights activists. No, okay, so there's somebody in the chat, one of the chats saying report take down MRAs for hate speech. Don't do that for two reasons. First of all, don't bother, because Twitter protects that account. That account has engaged in all kinds of abuses and been reported for several of them by various people who have tweeted out that they reported the account. So I know it's been done. And nothing ever happens to that account. And it's protected by Twitter. So you'd be wasting your time. But even if you weren't, I don't think stuff like that should be silenced. I think it should be highlighted and talked about and used as an example of what a shit movement feminism is. But yeah, that exists within feminism as well. And I could see the collective guilt thing happening with if women were to come into men's rights activism with the idea that they could use it to control and manipulate other people, then the collective guilt thing could happen. The remedy or vaccine, I guess you could say, against that is this movement at its most basic level is about the opposite of controlling other people and manipulating other people. It's about stopping manipulation, and it is about giving people their ability or fighting for people's ability to have their individual rights recognized and to be treated as individuals instead of lumped in together under some sort of group guilt. So I don't think it would have the same power that it has in the feminist movement. I think it would end up being a massive fart in a skillet, and it would fizzle out so fast people wouldn't even be aware that the attempt had been made.
Fart in a skillet. I never heard that before. That's
so. Are we the manipulation police? Are you manipulation policing me, bro? Yeah, actually we are. We're a vigilante militia of manipulation police. Deal with it.
Couple more super chats. One from Observing Libertarian gives us $10. Thank you, man. Hope you're doing all right. Even tradcon women expect men to remain silent and simply be gracious to the fact that women deem them worthy of companionship. Men are expected to know their place as slaves, not as humans. And Zeranx gives us $10. Thank you, man. And writes, saw a video that hated the idea that wives owe their men respect. Number of things wrong in it. For one, if you can't respect the guy you said yes to a majority of the time to the point of marriage. So if you can't respect the guy you said yes to a majority of the time to the point that you married him, ... And then thinky face. Is that what you call that? The thinky face?
See, now I have a question, because it says, saw a video that hated the idea that wives owe their men respect. Now I'm wondering, is this a video made by a woman? Because I say this all the time, in general, and I got to say in general because I know there are going to be the not-alls out there, even though I'm female and I'm saying it. Women don't understand respect. They don't know what it is. They use the word respect when they mean veneration, when they're talking about themselves. When they ask that stupid question, don't you respect women? Do you respect women? They don't understand respect. Okay, so Ziering says yes, it was a woman. She doesn't know what she's talking about. When she hears the word respect, I will bet you dimes to dollars, she thinks that she is expected to put him on some kind of pedestal on which he can do no wrong, and she's never allowed to take issue with any differences of opinion that they have. And she's never allowed to belch or fart in front of him, and God forbid she cuss.
Another thing is that respect is often expanded, like to also include things like common courtesy, politeness, and that's also considered respect. So it's not something that you earn, because respect is earned, and common courtesy is a different thing altogether that is often like people say, well, it's a kind of respect. No, I don't want to go with that. Let's say common courtesy is one thing. You know, if you choose to hold the door for somebody, if you choose to do something in public, a small gesture of kindness, that's not necessarily respect. Respect is something where you see that someone has done something, or they've done something that is worthy of respect, and therefore you treat them with respect. You treat them differently as a result. If you gave everyone respect, no matter what, then it doesn't have any value. Respect is something that has to be earned because it's worth something. Common courtesy is separate, you know, and so when you expand the definition of respect to mean just doing anything that's nice to somebody for someone else, and then on top of that you expect that respect should be, like you were saying, Hannah, you know, reverence,
right,
then you're going to get these kinds of reactions.
And this is something that I've been noticing for quite some time, because the question has always bothered me. You hear women, and they'll say it in the stupidest situations. I ended up writing a post about that on my blog a couple of years ago, because I was in a convenience store, and there was a guy. He might have been homeless. He was dressed nicer than you usually see people dressed when they're homeless, but he had the particular hasn't bathed and has been chain smoking for forever, smell that you see on the or you get on the clothes of homeless people. And this woman is in there. She's pissed off that this guy stinks in front of her, and she actually used that phrase. What's the matter with that guy? Doesn't he respect women? As in, how dare you stink in public? Don't you respect women? Like, what does that have to do with respect? It's not even common courtesy. She doesn't know anything about this guy. He might have been working for 6 days straight and not had a chance to take a shower and not had a chance to change his clothes. What does that have to do with her? It doesn't have anything to do with her. And that led me off on, at that time, a sort of a tirade about women not understanding what respect is. And modern women, like, back in the day, there used to be sort of an exchange, at least, for the pedestal. You know, women were up on this pedestal of you're expected to coddle women's sensibilities in terms of things like that. Don't stink in front of them. You know, don't cuss in front of them. Don't use rough language. Don't engage in rough behavior in front of them and stuff like that. But women were supposed to, at their side of that bargain, they had to demonstrate moral superiority and be ladies. And we don't have to be ladies anymore. Being a lady is not required whatsoever. That pedestal has been shattered, and yet women are standing on the air where the pedestal used to be, going, what's the matter with that guy? Doesn't he respect women? Why should he? You belch and fart like he does. You drink like he does. You fight like he does. You smoke like he does. What do you do to deserve the reverence that women received as part of that bargain, which I think was an unequal bargain? I think men really got the shit into that deal. But what do you do to even give the semblance of earning that women used to give? Nothing. And yet you use the word respect when you mean reverence, or when you mean veneration, and you demand it, even though you are, for all intents and purposes, a man with tits.
Ha, gotcha.
You have got me.
You have got me. All right. So I got to go through a couple more super chats, and then we got to move on to the last story because it's getting a little long, and I got another stream later on with Micah Curtis. We're going to be playing D&D online. All right. So Xeranx gives us... No, I already read that one. So there are no more super chats. Wait, I thought there was another one. I feel like I missed one. No, I guess not. All right. I read all the super chats. Or you guys could just give us some more, and then I'll have something to read. But moving on to the last story. No, wait. There's two more. Jesus. All right. Wow. All right. We'll get through this. It's fine. A former Coastal Carolina University football player has filed a lawsuit against the university. The unnamed football player was expelled after a cheerleader accused him of rape back in August of 2016, despite being cleared by the Conway Police Department and a student conduct panel. It was only after the cheerleader filed an appeal that the second hearing was granted, even though at the time she missed the appeal deadline. This time, the newly formed Student Council Board heard the case and ruled in favor of the accuser after less than half of an hour of deliberation. The board stated that the cheerleader was, quote, incapacitated by alcohol consumption based on the statements provided, end quote, and that the football player, quote, was familiar with her from previous interactions and therefore reasonably should have known that she was incapacitated and therefore unable to give consent, end quote. The lawsuit filed by the football player indicates that a blood alcohol test administered at the time shows that she had less than the legal limit for driving in her system. The lawsuit also states that the cheerleader violated the university policy about retaliating against those involved in a school investigation. It alleges that she contacted the football player's church and informed them of the sexual assault hearing, which led him to being banned from volunteering and the loss of his summer job at the said church. Coastal University remains firm in their decision, though. Coastal spokeswoman Martha Hunn stated in an email, quote, the lawsuit alleges that the university erred by dismissing him. However, the university acted properly and will vigorously defend the lawsuit, end quote. So, go ahead.
She contacted his church. It's bad enough that she made a false accusation. And it's bad enough that she tried to use I was drunk to get out of accountability for her own actions. And it's bad enough that she had such a negative impact on his schooling. But to stalk him, in addition to all of that, like, that should be considered a criminal offense. This woman should be subject to stalking laws for what she did. This is actually, she's not a victim. He is. This is a serious thing. If this was the other way around, if, for instance, going back to that vexatious litigant case I talked about, the one where the guy was taken in for questioning because they never called it arresting when they arrested him, taken in for questioning for a drive-by greeting that never happened. If he had gone to some organization his lying ex was involved with and prove to them 100% that she perjured herself in court, because she did that numerous times, when in the course of accusing him, he would have been convicted of stalking. And that was when there was actual guilt. Like, here we have a situation where the guy didn't do anything. It was proved that the guy didn't do anything wrong, that her accusation was a false accusation. And she stalked him in his life outside of the school and slandered him to a group of people that, we were just talking about, traditionalist conservatives, tradcons, and particularly neo-tradcons, but they're more geared toward protecting women than average society is. Of course they're going to retaliate against him. That's vindictive and malicious. And really, she should be arrested.
Yeah. It's, well, he's suing him, so hopefully this works out in his favor. But it's not really going to repair the damage that's been done. But, we've talked about this kind of stuff before when it comes to allegations. It's a difficult thing to bounce back from. So, good luck, anonymous person. His name is John Doe in the article. Unless your name is actually John Doe, in which case I apologize for assuming you were anonymous.
Imagine if your name was actually John Doe. No one would ever believe your story.
All right, let's go on to the final story. Hannah pretty much said...
I just want to say this.
Go ahead.
I just want to say, if your name is John Doe, if you're out there and your name is John Doe and you get married and you have a daughter, you should name her Cookie.
There you go.
And if your name is Jane Roe, you should name your daughter Cod. Yeah.
All right, last story and the funniest one. We're gonna try and end this on a laughable note. All right, oppressive architecture. Yeah, this is real. Air conditioning, compliments from strangers, manspreading, mansplaining, the pink tax, emotional labor, lack of pockets in women's clothing, crunchy and messy snacks, climate change. Now, bathroom lines. The one good man in architecture, John Kerry, says long bathroom lines are for the ladies is representative of a more serious issue. The white male elitist profession has led to a lack of diversity, which has in turn led to thoughtless, compassionless spaces. Kerry suggested to his audience at his TED Women 2017 talk that things would be much different if even half of architectural blueprints were designed by women and people of color. The design of a building or room is important both for functionality and even making people feel a certain way. Kerry goes as far as to say a building's design should make people feel dignified and respected. I'm going to say that again. A building's design should make people feel dignified and respected. This, he says, goes against our conditioning to feel we don't have agency over the places we live, work, and play. Kerry inspirationally calls for all to have agency in these places, including bathroom lines. I suggest peeing on the floor to assert your agency over the building. Look, I do want to agree with Kerry on some things, like the importance of design for helping people fulfill various functions and even the impact on their mood. Yeah, hospitals could use a perking up without losing the functionality of sanitation, which is the goal. However, architects already do design buildings with health, safety, and the welfare of public in mind. You can, in fact, create human spaces for other humans despite differing genitalia or the color of your skin. And women and people of color can, in fact, go into architecture in the West with no hindrances, maybe even some benefit from affirmative action. As far as bathroom lines go, firstly, why are women's lines longer? Maybe we should be thinking about that. Secondly, can businesses afford to make the women's bathrooms sprawling parking lot-sized spaces for peak functionality? Or does it just take a magical blueprint made by a woman?
Oh, for crying out loud. Okay, let's do the math. You go in, you have to finagle with clothing that is not made to be easily removed and put back on. It's made to look cute. Sometimes it's all one piece and you have to take like half of it off, right? And you've got a purse that you're juggling because you can't leave it outside, and maybe there's no place to hang it, and you don't want your long sweater to touch the floor, and you don't want to get your hair in the little trash can that's like right under your elbow that's attached to the wall for the disgusting maxi pads and stuff. And you're trying not to sit on the seat because your mom told you if you sit on a public toilet seat you'll get herpes and all manner of other diseases. And all of that is going on while you're trying to pee, versus the guy walks in, unzips, whips it out, pisses in the urinal, gets done, maybe washes his hands and leaves. Okay, who's going to have the longer line?
Yep.
Now, in
also
Germany,
consider one other thing too. Women usually go to the bathroom in pairs, like as a group, right? So that makes things take longer too, because it's not just like when men go to the bathroom. Okay, we don't even usually feel comfortable talking to each other while we're in there. We just get it done and we get out. But I don't know what goes on in women's bathrooms, but I imagine there's a lot of chit chat and they're in front of the mirror and they're, it's not just going and then leaving. I don't think.
If women had any idea how many germs they are putting on their faces in the women's room, they take their purse in the women's room, okay, and they go into the stall where there is no lid, so when they flush the toilet, it sprays germs everywhere, including all over their purse, which is partially open and has their makeup in it. And then they come out of the stall and they go over to the mirror and they primp their hair and they talk about their boyfriends and they pull the makeup out of that bag that just got sprayed with toilet germs and they put it all over their face. Mm-hmm. And some of them do that, without washing their hands. And they're brushing their hair and all that other stuff, yeah. So yeah, women spend a lot of time in the restroom. It's known. Women spend a lot of time in the restroom. They spend a lot of time in the toilet, and they spend a lot of time in the rest of the restroom.
Khaleesi, it is
and-
known.
and don't forget the pee shy woman who has to put toilet paper into the toilet before she pees, so that even though you went into a stall with a toilet and everybody knows what you're doing in there, you don't make any noise when you pee, because it's hitting the toilet paper and not hitting the water. It I mean,
Weird.
there's all kinds of reasons why women take forever in the restroom.
Yeah.
And
So
they're
this is-
and the majority of them are women's fault, and they're stupid.
This is another one of those areas in which men do have the privilege of being able to point it, towards the porcelain, so it's silent. But in the same way, men's toilets have this function where men actually stand next to each other with their genitals out, and there's that's why men don't talk in the bathroom, because there's guys just stood over there with their genitals out, like stood next to each other.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen in women's toilets. It's walled off.
No.
The unfortunate, unhygienic part of the experience is completely walled off from everything else. So it feels like that sort of emotionally as well, I guess. I'm just speculating, obviously.
Yeah.
Women's urinals have been invented. Germany has them. Japan has them. They're a little different in the article that I found today than they are in the article I found on Japan previously that didn't come up first in search this time. But the ones that I saw before in Japan, like where the men's urinal has sort of a U shape to it, and almost looks like a sink without the faucets. The women's urinal looks like somebody cut the middle out of a banana seat for a bicycle and then bent it up a little at the pointy end in the front, so they can squat over it. That's the way the ones looked in the Japanese article.
Yeah.
And these are like, basically, if that's all you have to do is go in and pee, and you're wearing a skirt, because it would kind of be awkward to drop your drawers and then try to straddle something. That would be a quick way to deal with it. And if there was something similar, like, I don't know what the image is in this German article. I don't think that's female urinals, because I just can't see a woman being able to use that without peeing all over herself. But
do the women's urinals in these other countries take up as much space as a stall, or
No.
more like a male urinal?
they don't. They're right next to each other, like the male urinals. And they don't have, like, they're narrow, because where with men you're shooting at something in front of you, with women you're standing over something, so it has to fit between your legs, and squatting over it. And yeah, now we got people going, now I gotta pee because you're
Yeah, but
talking
what
about
if-
having to pee.
But what if you're wearing pants?
You
What if-
guys quit your bitching. I drink 4 glasses of water every show because of my dry mouth. So I always have to pee by the end of the show, and I just deal with it. And now we're talking about it. But yeah, those have existed for the little handheld ones that you're supposed to be able to use to stand up and pee. Those have existed for like forever. Those were around when I was a kid.
Go ahead, Mike.
And I was just going to say, I as you can imagine, I have to drink 4 pints of something or other because of my dry liver. Each to their own.
There you go.
I wanna,
So I often have to disappear as well, but I don't talk much, so it's all right.
There was a comment earlier by a woman named Jane Frazier in our chat that says, because women sit to pee and a lot of women menstruate, so we take longer per bathroom usage per average, so the capacity is lower. I don't disagree with that, and I'm going to try and be as charitable as possible. So let's assume that in an instance that there are women that are not, taking a whole lot of time in front of the mirror, putting on makeup. They're not, trying to be quiet and preparing their little bathroom space with the toilet paper so they don't make noise. And let's say that they're super efficient. They go in, they don't have to take off their pants or pull them down. They're wearing skirts and no panties, and they just go and they come right out. It still takes longer than when men do it. And it's not because of fucking sexism like this guy claims. He also claims that if there were more women architects, that bathroom lines would be shorter and somehow magically better because women magically know how to make better architecture than, or at least for women, which is crazy because that would mean that if there were too many women architectures or architectural drafts people, that men would somehow become disadvantaged because they can't possibly understand male bathrooms or the male experience in some way. But the fact is, unless we have a massive cultural shift in the West, because of course these people only talk about things in terms of the United States or the West in general, to where you can have these urinals like the Japanese ones that Hannah's talking about, women bathrooms will always take longer because there's less real estate space for urinals. Like they're like, how many, you can have so many stalls in a women's bathroom, and a lot of times I think women want more privacy, or they care more about their privacy than men do, especially if they are menstruating. Maybe they want that to be private, so you need to give them each a stall, and you're only going to fit, like if the real estate space of the bathrooms are identical, which they usually are, then you're going to fit fewer stalls in a women's bathroom than a men's bathroom. It's just the nature of the beast. The only way you could change that is if you made the women's bathrooms enormous to compensate. Like if you wanted to match equality, if you wanted the same number of stalls that the men's bathroom has, including the urinals, because of course in men's bathrooms there are also stalls for guys that want to shit, then you'd have to make the women's bathroom like fucking 2 or 3 times the size. And that's not practical. Like if you're some guy that runs a nightclub, you know, and it's just this little like hole in the wall, or a bar or a little restaurant, you can't possibly do that for women. Even if you like ran a fancy hotel, you couldn't make bathrooms that big. You can make them bigger, obviously, but there'll still be lines, you know, during conventions or times where it's really busy. So this women's line thing is kind of retarded because he's trying to conclude that the reason for it is because there aren't enough women architects. And therefore it's sexism because men don't understand women. And on top of that, here's another one that's even weirder. Why does he say with people of color? If there were more people of color doing architecture, there'd be more more buildings that accommodate them.
There'd be more segregated bathrooms.
How does that work? Like, do people of different races make different buildings? Like, I know that culturally they'll be different, but he's talking about race. Would that actually make a difference?
Specifically, he's talking about it in terms of bathroom lines, which makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, well, he's using bathroom lines as an example, but I think it's a bad example. He's trying to say, if we had fewer white guys doing architecture, then the world would be a better place. Literally, this is what he's saying, okay? And that does not compute, because a black architect is going to design similar buildings to a white one. He's not going to be thinking, this needs some, red, yellow, and green in here somewhere. Like, it's not gonna happen. It's just stupid. There's no such thing. Like, I'm sorry, there just isn't. Culturally, it's gonna matter. Geographically, it's gonna matter. Like, if you're up north, you're gonna be thinking about ways to insulate the building to make sure that it stays warm in the winter, and maybe if you're in the south or whatever, you want it to be a place that's cooler in the summer, so people aren't dying.
Or what category of hurricane force winds you want it to be resistant
exactly.
to.
You want it to basically protect it against the elements. That's the point of a fucking building. So that's what they're gonna do. But people of different races are not gonna give you different buildings. I don't know what he's talking about. I mean, people are creative and they're gonna come up with ways that the buildings look different. But race doesn't determine that. It's the individual architect that does that. And female architects exist, and minority architects exist, and still, I bet if you look up a female architect, if you look at every building she's ever been involved with, there are probably bathroom lines, and they're probably long for women.
Yep. I don't know if you see it, but I put a picture of one set. These don't come to a point like the ones I saw from Japan, but one set of these female urinals, and one difference I've noted, because I've cleaned restrooms before, there are little sort of privacy walls in between these urinals. I don't think I've ever seen those in a men's room.
Yeah.
Between the urinals.
Oh, I've seen those. You mean these little privacy things? Oh yeah, lots of
Yeah.
places. Yeah, I've seen those in lots of places.
Of
Airports.
course, I've never worked any place that had a fancy restroom that I had to clean.
Yeah.
So-
Well, I mean, this looks pretty fancy, but I've seen theaters, like the theater I go to. Usually they have this for men.
Little
I've seen
dividers
it in
between the
Yeah,
urinals.
yeah. Because, well, I think in part it's probably because when it comes to certain kinds of public spaces, there are kids that go, right. So if you're a little boy, they want to have a little divider because I mean, there's a boy with his dick in his hand, so maybe you don't want the stranger next to you being able to see it. I don't know. It's like what Mike was saying.
Well, there's also the splash factor.
Yeah,
If I
and
was
then
in
there's
one of-
that.
If I was in one of those, all I could think about is like making a phone call in the 50s.
like if you're a press person, yeah.
I just got the latest scoop, Jimmy. Press it.
And you're standing there doing that, and the guy next to you is like edging away.
So yeah.
Why are you looking at me like that? I'm talking on my dick phone.
Dicks out for urinals. All right, so I guess that's, unless there's any other final thoughts on this, we can wrap it up and go on to the after show.
Well, Allison says in the chat that we should shill the fundraiser.
Oh, I did in the beginning, Allison, but I'll do it again. Well, you guys know we're doing a fundraiser because the court drama continues. It is like some kind of Egyptian fable. It does not end. So please go to, and I will put it back on the screen, feedthebadger.com, and help us infiltrate Alberta civil courts again. You guys already know that they're trying to drag things out. They're doing this in bad faith. I knew they were pieces of shit anyway, but Allison is a bit of an optimist, so it's time that we got to try to settle this. Time for justice. So go to feedthebadger.com.
What they're trying to do is drag it out until we can't get funding anymore.
Yeah, until we run out of money.
That is what
That's their goal.
And they're going to hit a wall. They're going to hit a point where they're going to face a judgment. The testimony will all be over. If we all have to go to court and testify and face cross-examination, then so be it. The trial eventually will come to an end because the judge isn't going to just let it go on indefinitely. There will be testimony. There will be cross-examination. There will be closing arguments, and then the judge will make a ruling. But that's the deal with this situation. It's not about whether they can win or lose. It's about whether they can run us out of money so we can't afford to fight anymore.
That's it. They just want us to...
And one way in which this doesn't resemble the Hulk Hogan case is, we're not going to get 9 figures from this. In fact, I don't think it's possible to get more than 5.
Right.
Unless
We
something
also
very
don't have...
unprecedented happens, which it probably won't.
We also don't have Peter Thiel. He doesn't have our backs. He doesn't know about this. I wish he did. It'd be nice to have the CEO of PayPal helping us out, but it's just you and us. You guys watching that are our donors and our very special friends, and us, the Badgers, that are doing this. But we can do this. In fact, I mean, I don't want to make things worse, but I think we have them against the ropes. Otherwise, this sort of thing would not be happening. That's just my thinking on it. But that's what I feel. So yes, go to feedthebadger.com and help us get down to Calgary for January 3rd, 4th, and 5th to try to end this thing, if at all possible. Now I'm going to read the Super Chats. There are Super Chats that are left before we close it out. So those of you guys who gave us some money, don't worry. I'm not going to forget. It's in July, yes. Did I say January? I'm sorry, Michael. 3rd, 4th, and 5th in July. It was in January, but they moved it up. I know. All right. So, yeah, if you guys can, just do it. Just do it. All right. So, Point Curation gives us $2 Canadian and says, there are no more Super Chats. Fat chance. Thank you. Zaranx gives us $5 and says, I kind of want to joke that for contacting his church, she should get 10 raps on her ass with a switch. However, I don't think I'm joking anymore, LOL. This is in reference to the story about the guy who was accused of rape the football player. That's kind of hot, by the way. Not just saying. A little bit. Chris Stewart gives us $10 and says, Chat and I were talking about sex bots, and I got to thinking, if sex bots ever really proliferate think women would start to get their acts together in order to compete? Probably, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we need each other. So, but I don't know if sex bots are ever going to be that popular.
No, they're going to get banned. They're going to get banned. They'll do that way before they think of getting their act together. Have you not seen the pattern by now? Anything that men enjoy more than women has to go, even if it's human women, like the grid girls. if it's artificial women, it's going to be out on its ear. You know it will.
Yeah,
unless
absolutely.
someone out there kicks up a stink. So help us kick up a stink, folks.
There you go. And Rico Champagne gives us $5 Canadian and says, I've been using the idiom all wrong. It's raked, not raped over the coals. Yes, it's, I don't know who. If someone's raping somebody over the coals, there's probably a Pornhub genre for that. Yeah.
That'd be totally hot over the coals.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And I can tell you that from experience. Not the rape part, but the over the coals part.
All right. And Sorrow Brand gives us $5 and says, good luck in court, heart and snail. I don't know what that means, but I'm sure it's code for something. Xerinx gives us $5 more and says, did you get the tweet I sent about the growing embryos, Hannah and Brian? Growing embryos? When did you send it, Xerinx? I haven't looked at my Twitter in a little while, so
I don't know if I did.
Yeah, I don't know if I did or not either. But I'll look at my Twitter after the show is over. All right, so if there is nothing else, I think that we can go ahead and wrap up the show. I've already shilled, so leave it there. And someone named Old War Vengiant gives us $25 US. I hope it helps. Thank you. I'm not going to read your name again, but Old Warven Giant, I guess is what it says. Yeah. So thank you for that.
Sorrowbrand gives us $5 and says, good luck in court. Thank you.
Thank you, Sorrowbrand.
We'll execute Order 66.
Oh, he just said snails are just cute. Yes. There you go. They are. I mean, in a way. Like I don't know. They're kind of cute, I guess. Whatever you're into. All right, well, anyway.
Old Dwarven Giant. That's
Old Dwarven Giant. Okay.
And for Summon King XYZ, who keeps saying, Hannah Wallen, why though? Somebody who said Hannah had sex over coals. No. I stuck my foot in hot coals when I was 5 to see if they were hot. They were.
There you go.
The more you know.
All right.
Oh, so, everybody in the neighborhood knew.
Excuse me. All right, well, I guess it's time to
shut it down.
So we're going to go ahead and get us out of here. I want to thank you guys for joining us on HBR News. I'm going to move on and do the after show. And at about 8 o'clock, I think, I'm not sure, but I might be streaming on Micah Curtis's channel playing Dungeons & Dragons. So if you want to hang out with us there, go ahead. I'm a bit rusty. I haven't done that in a while, but hopefully I'll see you guys then. And until next time, we'll see you guys on the next HBR News. Thank you.